Now, the Bram Weinstein Show on Washington's new home for sports, ESPN 630.
Hey, babies, hey, babies, hey, babies. Hi, everyone. What's up? Happy Friday. Woo!
No football preview today.
No football preview today. We'll have one next week for one game.
For one game.
One whole game.
Savor it, guys.
Yeah.
We got one left.
Have to figure out how to spend 20 minutes talking about a breakdown of a game. We'll figure that out, though. There's a lot going on there. Thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Christian Juszczyk. Thanks, MAGA.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
You'll
we
be
got
out
a
there.
lot
You'll
to talk about.
You'll be able to grab all the prop sheets for us.
I'll be ready.
Yeah,
I'll be ready. I will be out there. I'm flying out after the show here Tuesday, so I'll get out there Tuesday night. Hopefully won't go wild pants Tuesday night. And then Wednesday morning, bright and early, I'll be down in my spot on Radio Row, and we'll do the show live for 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
Bright and early. It'll be noon, bruh. You'll be fine.
Yeah, but you know how this goes, you know.
When we did this show before,
the clocks don't exist out
when
there.
we did this show
There's no
before,
such
you
thing
were on
as
at 10
time.
a.m.
That was bad.
and
we did it next
was
to the morning show from Mexico City.
the
and
literal
they played,
morning zoo.
And they played a cowbell every 20 seconds.
Right. One of those mornings.
It was very disturbing.
One of those mornings I didn't go to sleep.
Yeah.
I went to go see Steve Aoki.
That's what happens. I'm gonna do all the Super Bowl stuff. So I have a feeling like I will not be out crazy late. And I know me.
You say that though. I mean, you never know. You never know.
I handle myself differently these days. As you know, I don't drink very much. So
I've seen you in that city though. You're a little different.
I'm a lot different in that city.
That's your happy place.
This is my happy
I don't think I've ever seen you any happier than when I've been with Vegas and you the few times we've gone.
It's just the energy. It's just the energy. The energy there is different. Everybody's so excited.
So
excited.
Brett Musburger to hot partners in the crowd, you to Las Vegas. That is how you act.
That's right. Yeah.
It is just wonderful.
It is. Yeah. Look at her.
Yeah, that's you to Vegas.
That is me. I know. I threaten my wife constantly. One day I will move out there. One day.
What's an apartment cost out there? I mean,
it depends where you want to be.
Right, I know. But
it's actually quite affordable if you want an apartment, unless you want the penthouse at the Wynn. And then,
that's
then it's not.
That's right.
Then it's not.
That's more than your house in Bethesda.
Yeah, that's right. Then it's not. But, they got all ranges. Depends where you want. If you want to be on the Strip, it's not even that. It depends where you go. If you go to a place that's not connected to a literal casino, it's actually not that bad.
Right.
So anyway, I got plenty of time to survey the real estate while I'm out there. See what I'm going to do. All right, we got a lot of, we've reached, now that this is all done, Dan Quinn is the head coach of the Commanders, and all the vacancies are filled. We're in full spin cycle. Mm-hmm. Okay, there's a lot out there already. This is fun, actually. It's a lot out there already. Let's put a button on the Ben Johnson thing. Okay, let's start there.
Okay, all right.
Because I've said for the last few days, since he decided to tell a billionaire and Magic Johnson on their way to meet with him that, no thanks, I don't want to meet with you, there could be a million reasons, right? A million reasons why that happened. I don't think he should have done that. Even if he wasn't going to get the job, I don't think he should have done that. I think he should have told them that way in advance. But whatever. I've described this as, I am now Mr. Wonderful Shark Tank. You're dead to me. Okay, you're dead to me, right?
And I
have a funny feeling that a few other owners are not going to take him very seriously anymore because of this.
Yep,
It may take a little while, but he may still get a head coaching job if he wants one.
It's 2 years in a row, though. Right? I mean, it's 2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. The league's telling you you're ready.
Yeah.
You're telling them you're not.
Right.
And at some point, you may not be the hot candidate anymore. And
again,
I don't want to talk about the girl that I was interested in all that much anymore. I'm married to somebody else now. So I don't, all's well that ends well. We're going to skip down the lane and go on our honeymoon. But, for the sake of this week and because of this story, we got to button it up. I mean, there's no way not to. Keim will be on at 4 o'clock again, and I'm going to tell him to button it up for me like what he heard, because I know what I've heard this week, and it's been a lot of spin cycle going on about what was really going on there.
It's also like, dude, it is Detroit. You're not in Miami or
on.
LA, where you could actually point
He's a little bit of Kirk. He might be a Kirk, where he's like, I kind of like it here.
Or Baker. I know it's Tampa, but Baker's like happy there though. Like it seems to be he's found his fam down there essentially.
Yeah, but I think this guy might be coaching Kirk.
That sounds about right.
He's actually very well organized. Actually, very good at what he does.
Right.
kind of likes being at home with his wife, watching Netflix on a Friday night, likes that job in that part of the country, and that's it. And I don't want to blah blah blah. I don't want your jobs.
He loves terrible cold weather and a city that's fine.
Yeah. I have found media and sports intersect in this way a lot, and you may have found this as well. And I have found this through my career, and it still continues this way. When certain people or certain entities ask you to do things, they're not asking you, they're telling you to do it. Yeah. And if you don't do it, there's a reverberation of that. So I hope he's happy in Detroit because he might be there for a while now.
Right.
But that's fine. He is good at his job. Anyway.
He's not on the Eminem diss track.
No. So let's try to be real about this. They wanted to talk to him because he was a serious candidate. Now, I know they're spin cycling a little bit like he was not in the bag. He was not the guy we were definitively going to give the job to, but they did wait to talk to him. So actions speak louder than words.
Yep.
They at least, it didn't mean they were going to give him the job, but they certainly wanted to have a full conversation with him before making a final determination. They wouldn't have waited this long if it wasn't the case.
That's right.
All right. He then gets cold feet or made demands or blew an interview. It really just depends on who you talk to now about it. We're a total spin cycle.
Yep.
Some people want to suggest that like his first interview actually didn't go particularly well. And then there's others that will suggest, maybe he's not quite ready to be the charismatic leader that everybody talks about. Others were suggesting that they kind of floated what demands would be on a contract for him, which were off-putting. Some people were saying that. And then there is if you just take him at face value, he likes his life where he is. He doesn't want to be a head coach right now. He likes it in Detroit because he thinks they can win there. They're very happy. Respectfully, I just don't want your job. And it could be all of these things. It could be, who knows, right? Only they really know all of it.
Yeah.
So, but the spin cycle's going. And here's Mike Garafolo, one of the insiders from NFL Network, who went on a station in Seattle. I guess he probably does a hit with them. And they did ask him, I guess, probably because of Seattle waiting, to talk to him and Mike McDonald, too.
Puck and Jim on 950 KJR.
Okay, so here's Mike Garafolo on his read on what was happening with Ben Johnson.
He wanted the Ravens to lose so he could talk to McDonald, but also the Lions to lose so he could talk to Johnson. Appears that those were his two guys. What happened with Johnson? He was such a hot name. What happened in that process, do you think?
I don't think he interviewed particularly well. And I listen, I've heard some rumblings before. All right, let's back up. So Johnson withdrew, and he withdrew as Washington was flying to go see him, which did not go over well at all with the Washington organization at all. But I believe he withdrew from two coaching searches that he wouldn't have gotten the job anyway. So that's the old, you're not fired, I quit, or I'm not fired, I quit, one of those deals. I don't think he really bowled people over in the interview process at all. And I've heard that his personality is, he's very smart, very bright, great play caller. But I've heard that his personality is kind of, I don't know, not the most gregarious guy, not a Mike McDonald type guy or even a Dan Quinn type guy. So I think that came across in the interview process. My belief is that he came into this. Adam Peters had Ben Johnson as his guy. And Adam Peters was not the only one making the decision there in Washington, which is not to say that he's undermined. But Rick Spielman was involved, Josh Harris, obviously the owner of the organization, Bob Myers involved as well. So it was four people who came to a collective decision, and it was not going to be Ben Johnson.
Okay, but here's what doesn't pass the sniff test to me. Why would Washington then, A, be flying out there to interview him, and then B, be angry that he canceled?
Because they were going to see him and Aaron Glenn, and they don't like the fact that we're making this trip, and you can't tell us before we get off the ground? Give me a break. So, they were interviewing him as part of the process, but I do not believe that he was the leading candidate at the time he withdrew. In fact, I think he was pretty low on their list at that point. And it was, Anthony Weaver, the defensive line coach for the Ravens, did extremely well. I heard great things about him. Aaron Glenn was eliminated, I believe, late last night, so I think it was down to Weaver and Dan Quinn. So they had other guys that they really hit it off better with than Ben Johnson.
Okay. So, right, and I appreciate the host asking back the question of, why'd you go to see him?
Yeah, right.
And there is a good excuse of, we were interviewing two candidates.
Sure. Yeah,
okay.
Right.
And this has been going around a little bit now, and I think Is it a save face for Washington? Maybe a little bit. We weren't going to hire him anyway. We're not going to say that publicly, but we're disseminating that to everybody because he did do something that when this happened on Tuesday, I went, that's an extraordinarily unprofessional thing to do. I'm just giving you professional advice. You don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, you could have told them last night.
That's right.
You could have told them last week. But let's just say you didn't really make your decision until after you're out.
Which is valid. By the way.
Okay, fine. You know, like, okay, fine. Like, you really were locked into your team and you were trying not to think about what next is. Fine. I'll buy that and I'll believe you and all that stuff. But you should have told him before the wheels went up. And I agree with that. And I'm like, so this is where you're dead to me. Yeah. And actually, a number of other ownership groups might look at something like that and go, don't even bother. Like, he's clearly wishy-washy. He doesn't know what he wants. And we're flying to see him, and he won't even have the meeting with us.
Yeah.
At the same time, all those rumors about him not wowing anybody in the interviews, they're not the first people to say that. But that's getting filtered out to the insider people, so they're allowing for an excuse to go out there. So you just have to believe whatever you want. I will go back to, and I'll just say this again, when they interviewed Dan Quinn prematurely, because they didn't think he would be out when he was out, they went out early, and they interviewed him. They quietly, not unlike what they just did with Garofalo, they made it very clear that he was a very serious candidate to them. But they wanted to go through the whole process. And they ended up going through the whole process, and this is where they landed. And I'm glad Garofalo said the other part that I kind of believed. When Johnson pulled out and McDonald became the Seahawks coach, it was my gut. I didn't know. My gut was they were going to hire Anthony Weaver at that point. That's what I thought, because I had heard the same thing he was hearing, that he was killing it in these interviews all over the place. Like, he had done the cycle too. He's out of the Ravens organization, just like McDonald, and they were talking about him glowingly, like from the leadership, communication, intangible type stuff, which is the real trait that they were looking for. So I was a touch surprised it was Dan Quinn, not overly surprised once they were down to it. And I thought maybe, and I'm glad they didn't buckle to this, you can't let public perception dictate who you hire.
That's right.
And I know that there was a faction of the fan base that seemed to be against Dan Quinn from the get-go, and I've described it almost as unfounded. Because the weirdest part of it all along, when I would talk to Keim or talk to people around the league, anybody, they would tell me, they're like, everybody around the league loves this guy, vouches for him, thinks he should get a second chance, is exactly what they're looking for in terms of the communication, leadership, modern communication style with the play. Go ask the players he's played for. He did win big early in Atlanta. It went south for various reasons, but he did win big early. So the league insider people described this as the right guy at the right time for them, but he wasn't the guy that they thought they were going to get or fit the profile of the guy they thought they were going to get, and they recoiled to it. So it's so crazy that there's a faction of the fan base that didn't like it, doesn't like it, maybe is coming around and warming up to it because it's reality. And the league insiders who go, boy, they picked the right guy. And I haven't seen a chasm like that in a long time. Most of the time, somewhere it's in the middle where people, come to all right, he wasn't the first choice, but we got a good coach. That's not what happened here. All the league insiders are going, boy, did they pick the right guy. Now it'll assume who his OC is. That's a big deal. They're like, let's see who he hires as his OC. But from the leadership standpoint, everyone thinks they picked the right guy in the league. And then the people here locally are screaming and yelling. And the weirdest part about that is, I think if we hired Raheem Morris and not him, I actually don't think that would have been the reaction.
Agree.
And he had a worse record as a head coach, but the same reputational status within league circles where people said he really should get another chance. And I don't hear people from Atlanta freaking out that they did retread or anything like that. So, and they were the ones primed to get Harbaugh or Belichick, and that's weird too. So I don't know where we are. But as we end the week and move on to, we're in new territory and this is our head coach, and a lot of people think we did get the right guy. I honestly feel like I'm not sure why it landed the way it did, but it did. And hearing some of the spin now is a lot of things I heard too, that he wasn't killing it in these interviews. Not that should, be the end all be all, but what they said they wanted was not just a guy who could coach, but they want a guy who can be a leader and communicate. And that was the boxes that apparently weren't totally checked by him. Weaver and Quinn did check that. So I thought they'd go with Weaver because of public perception, that everybody wants fresh and new.
Yeah, right.
And because they didn't do fresh and new, I think that's what the backlash was. I think. I'm not totally certain. I think everybody had their heart set on something. Yeah, it didn't happen, and then all of a sudden they went a different direction. And in the meantime, they've been telling you, be prepared. This guy might be our choice because we think he's a really good candidate, but everybody didn't hear that along the way.
Yeah, to me, it was just the assumption that it was Rivera 2.0, but that, especially hearing some of the stories in the last 24, 48 hours, it's not the case. He isn't
not
Ron
at all
2.0. He seems to be a little more modern is what the word I would use. Like, he likes to change. He likes to see where he can adapt. Adapt is the word I would use. That's what I was looking for there.
Yeah.
He seems to adapt more than Ron would. And once again, for the millionth time, he's not handling personnel. He's not Ron 2.0. Like,
this is also not the same owner, and it's not the same front office. So he's
right.
walking into a different situation. And I would say this, in fairness to Ron, if he had walked into this situation
right.
where he wasn't in charge of personnel, maybe it'd be different for him, honestly.
And like... Dan isn't going to be interrupted in his office by saying, do you like this helmet or this helmet?
Right.
Because that's what Ron was dealing with.
Or what are your thoughts on the congressional investigation into this?
Right.
And Ron's like, I don't know. Yeah. I'm trying to get ready to play the 49ers, guy.
Guys.
Guys.
Also, with Quinn, I think we need to say it one more time. He wanted to be here. That was what all the sourcing was. It was a mutual interest thing. He was interested in being here. I want the guy that wants to be here.
I went on with your guy Scott today. I did a hit for him. Yeah. And he asked me, he goes, what would you want to ask him? And I said that to him. I go, actually, the real question, and I'm not saying this from a critical point of view, I want to ask him honestly and genuinely, why did you want this job?
Yeah, right.
Because you had a full deck down there.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't changing anything.
Right.
And maybe you just want to be a head coach again, and I get that.
He also had that pathway, though, laid out in front of him, too.
Yes. And so, how do you look at us and see the grass is greener?
Yeah.
So I just want to ask him that, and I can't wait to hear what his answer is, because I just want to hear what his honest opinion of the whole thing is, because he really wanted this job.
Yeah.
And now he got it. So we'll see what he does with it, and we'll see what the roster he has with it. And then everybody keeps asking me, what is the team going to be competitive? What's the timeline? I don't even know what the roster is going to look like. It's too premature. There are a lot of guys not under contract. Adam Peters has to fill out a roster before we even get to what kind of moves are we making, what style we're doing. So I'm like, it's way too premature to go, he better win in 2 years. I don't even know what their roster looks like next year. So I think we need to get me to the summer. Let me see what our projected 53 looks like, and then I can give you a better sense. Okay, do we have a roster that's built to win if things go well?
Right.
Or at least has the budding parts of built to win, and then things go well. And until that point comes, I can't project any of this. That's just why I think it's also, I don't think you should make any assumptions about this hiring at all. You don't even know what the team looks like.
That's right. Yep.
At
exactly.
all.
Yep.
All right. So then came out who's going to be the OC. And the reports are Chip Kelly, and I've heard this, wants to get back in the NFL, realizes he won't be a head coach again, because that went really wrong, but wants to come back into it. I think has really turned his career back around, back in the college ranks. UCLA has been extremely competitive the last few years. They typically aren't, actually. They typically aren't. They're like a mid-tier Pac-12 team, and have been for a long time. They're never on the same stratosphere as Oregon or USC or those teams. They have, bump years here and there where they get a good player, but they don't have this. Dorian Thompson-Robinson was really good under him and ended up being drafted and might be an answer for Cleveland long-term. We'll see, right? They have been ranked the last couple of years. They've been extremely competitive the last couple of years. And so when I saw his name, I know the immediate reaction was going to be to scoff at the idea of it. I actually am on the other side of that. And I don't know whether he's going to end up being the OC here. I think it'll be very telling if he is. Because if he is, I think it screams that we are not taking Drake May, that we are probably taking Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams if he's available, and I'll get to him in a second. But so I'm not against him at all. In fact, for the people who are saying, what concerns me about hiring a defensive coach is when we get the offensive coordinator and we get this young new quarterback, if it works, that coordinator is going to get plucked, and then we might have a problem. And you know what? I'll hear that as a potential criticism. That won't happen with Chip Kelly.
Right.
He will not get plucked to be a head coach again, not in any short-term future at all. And I got to tell you, as a head coach and with the personnel stuff, a lot like Ron, he messed up.
Yes.
Bad.
Both places.
Yes. He messed up bad with the personnel. But as just the coach, I got to tell you, when he's only been in that position, he's extremely creative. A lot of his concepts work in the NFL. And I remember back in Philadelphia when they had Vic Part 2.
Yep. Vic was the best he had
unstoppable.
Ever been. Yeah, right.
That offense was unstoppable. So I am not at all against this. And I don't have any insight as to whether he's seriously going to be considered to be the offensive coordinator. But when I saw his name pop up, I went, that actually makes a lot of sense to me. And it would not surprise me at all if that's the way they go. And considering where they sit in the draft and the style of quarterback they're going to get, a multifaceted quarterback in all likelihood, it screams to me that is what they're going to do if they hire him. I don't know that that's the wrong thing here. In fact, that actually feels like the right move to me.
I am more cautious on that one just because I am worried about how his ship was run. Granted, as you said, he won't be the head coach.
Not the head coach.
He won't be firing the secretary like he did up in Philadelphia.
He's not the head coach. He's not the GM. He will be third in that power structure.
Yeah, right.
And a clear third in that power structure.
Not unlike Dan Quinn. I would lay on the middle on this. I wouldn't go overly negative or overly positive. It's a very prove it, type situation. I wouldn't freak out over that one, though, because you're right. The number one thing is if he was the coordinator here, he would not be plucked up by anybody. So you could have that longevity. That actually sets it out from the get-go. If they were to draft Jaden Daniels or whatever, or whoever that would be, there would be some consistency there, which is important. But it's the same thing as Quinn, funny enough. It's like it doesn't feel like a slam dunk. It feels like a wide open layup, which is fine.
That's right.
But it's I kind of said this morning when I was filling in Tony's hour, was basically you shouldn't call it a slam dunk no matter who it is, because that's just not how fandom works. But you also shouldn't crap all over it because it's just not what you envisioned either. Wait until they give you a reason to go one way or the other. And I think I would be the same way with Kelly as I am with Quinn at that point.
Okay. All right. Now, on Caleb Williams, because here we are at number 2. Everyone assumes he goes number 1.
Yep.
And I'm going to play this bite, and I want to take it with a grain of salt because he's the only person literally saying it, although it's been bubbling rumors for a while that Caleb Williams wants to dictate where he wants to go.
Yep.
And his father even hinted this last year before it ever started, and he knew who would have the number 1 pick. We may stay if we don't like the destination.
That's
Now,
right.
I never believed that because you're not going to make up for NIL money and be the number 1 overall pick. It doesn't add up. So you have to go into the draft. However, you can make enough noise to try to get to wherever you want to get to, or at least not end up in the place that has the number 1 overall pick. And with Chicago, they do still have, I believe, an interesting decision to make. I don't know that you have to walk away from Justin Fields if you're them, but I think it's hard to turn down Williams. But what if he doesn't want to go there, which is, a possibility, right? This is Colin Cowherd, okay? It's not Rappaport or Schefter, and I'm not dismissing this. He's also located in L.A.,
right.
and he's way more in tune with the college stuff than he is with the NFL stuff, to be honest. So, I'll hear it out. I'll let you just hear what he said here. But is it a hot take or is it a report? You'll have to decide. But this was Cowherd on his show.
There's some concerns here that Dad's a little too involved. Now, dads are very, very involved in high school and college quarterbacking. So that's just part of the new world we live in. But I still contend, you're going to think I'm nuts here. I do think it's possible that Washington trades up and Chicago allows Washington to trade up, because Caleb and his group do not want to go to Chicago. He's from the D.C. area. I think Dan Quinn is considered the big concern for Caleb Williams, and you have to admit this. Where you land matters. Chicago has never developed a star quarterback.
Okay. So is that a report? Is it just his position on it? I don't know.
Right.
He's saying he does not want to go there, and then insinuates immediately, and I said this the second we got the number 2 pick, I go, if he doesn't want to be in Chicago, or Chicago doesn't want him, which is even better, then we're actually a really good trade partner for them. Because sure, they could probably talk to the Raiders, who are clearly angling to get one of these quarterbacks, or someone else, or Minnesota, or somebody really wants to move up and get one of these quarterbacks, and probably get more from them, but move farther down the draft board. If they want Marvin Harrison, they could trade with us.
That's right. Yeah.
Frankly, if they want Jaden Daniels, they could trade with us.
That's right. Yeah,
and just drop one spot and get probably another first-round pick out of it next year, something like that, or a second this year and a second next year.
Back, yeah.
Now, is that better than getting 4 first-round picks from somebody, they'd have to make that decision. But they could also get their guy and 2 more valuable picks and just move forward. So they'll have to make a decision like that.
Right.
So do I buy this? I don't know. Now, on the one part of this where he said, dads are involved in high school and college, not so much in the pros. RG3's dad was very involved.
That's right.
Dwayne Haskins' dad was very involved. Peyton Manning's dad, Eli Manning's dad, was differently involved, but very involved. Mm-hmm. Brock Purdy's dad is at every game. Tom Brady's dad was involved. Tom Brady's dad says he talks to Bob Kraft.
Yeah, right.
Still did, and probably did at the time. So his dad is publicly speaking, but don't get this twisted.
Yeah, for sure.
That's not unusual.
Right.
At all. We've lived it with a couple of high-profile quarterbacks that we got. Even Joe Burrow's dad, remember, made a lot of waves by saying things about him maybe not wanting to go to Cincinnati. Then he ended up going there, but his dad was involved.
Yeah.
So that's not, don't get that twisted. That's actually not unusual whatsoever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Burrow's dad hasn't said anything since pre-draft, though, as far as I can tell. Yeah,
it's also going very well.
Yeah, right. No, of course. Yeah,
it's going very well. And all the, don't go back home. Well, it's going pretty well for him, and that's home. That's his home team.
Yeah. The other part about that, though, with Coward is that one almost feels like we've been out of, that one hit the cycle so long ago. It's almost like he regurgitated something from 16 news cycles ago because we heard that already.
Again, and it's him, and none of the insiders are saying he doesn't want to go to Chicago. So until I hear Schefter or Rappaport say it, I don't totally buy it.
That one just feels like a respin is what it sounded like to me.
I agree. So that's why I don't want to put too much stock in it. But I will say this, and this is very early, and I am allowed to change my mind about this. I do want him over the other 2.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
Got it.
Just having watched a good amount of Daniels recently, because I'm starting to prime myself where we might pick him.
Yeah.
And then watching a decent amount of May, and obviously seeing a ton of Caleb Williams because of the way he's played over the last couple of years. He's actually the one I want. And do I fear what's going on with his people around him? It sounds like you should at least take some general interest in paying attention to what's happening there. Do I like how he handled himself down the stretch at USC? Not particularly.
Right.
But you know what? He's a different level caliber player who had a really disappointing season, and I'm willing to hear out from him, that everything will be fine when I get to the professional area. Am I worried about him coming home? Yeah.
Yes.
A little bit. Yes.
It hasn't worked out the last 2 times.
No, we had 2 homegrown first-round picks, Haskins, and more prominently, I think, because everyone said Haskins was a reach where they took him.
Yes.
But Chase Young was not. Right. And that one, unfortunately, also did not end up being what we thought it would be.
Yep.
So I'm worried about all those things. But just from a pure, which of these players do I want? I want Caleb. And if that's actually possible, then I want that to happen. And I think that would be an amazing start. And you know what? Who would know him better right now than the guy who's played against him the last couple of years, Chip Kelly?
Right.
Who also does these unique offenses that try to accentuate players that have unique skill sets like he does or like Jaden Daniels does. Yep. So I'm into it. All right, we'll take a quick break. My buddy Scott Jackson hosted the postgame show. He's on air down in Hampton Roads. Going to join us next with his reaction to the hiring of Dan Quinn. Brand watch the show. ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. All right, let's welcome in the host of the Commanders postgame show, Scott Jackson. Scott, what's up? How are you? Nice to talk to you.
Great. Good to talk to you as well.
I didn't even intro you, right? Tell everybody where they can hear you these days.
I'm down in the 757 on the Scott Jackson Show ESPN radio affiliate down here, 94.1 on the FM side. You can always grab us on the app as well. So we're here every day, 3 to 7 down here in the Time Warner area, as some people refer to it as, Hampton Roads. 757 is the easiest, I think. Studios in Virginia Beach. So here every day, talking a lot of things that we talk about in DC too.
All right, very good. Just now, you've had 24 hours with it. What's your general reaction to Dan Quinn as the new head coach?
Well, I mean, look, it wasn't the first choice, right? I mean, I think we can all admit that this was not the first choice by the fan base. Certainly doesn't appear to be what the franchise was intending to do initially, but he was the guy that actually wanted the job and was available, which was not the case with Ben Johnson, because he obviously decided that he wanted to, give it another run in Detroit for whatever reason. Was it power? Was it money? Was it just really that he felt like he had unfinished business? Who knows? He'll have to answer that at some point, I suppose. But, so once it got to that point, were you going to go with Mike McDonald, who, took the Seahawks job, or, was Quinn soon to be the next guy on their board? And like it's funny. So people mention the term retread all the time, and Andy Reid's a retread. Jim Harbaugh is a retread, believe it or not. I mean, if you're talking about people that have had second chances to be NFL coaches, I mean, there's a lot of them in the league. The league's littered with them, and a lot of them are really good coaches. So, I think the big key for me now is to, I love this defenses in Dallas. Certainly didn't love the last game they played, but what does he learn from his first experience in the NFL, and obviously what's the staff look like? Who's the offensive coordinator most importantly, and then what do they do with that the second overall pick, and to kind of find the quarterback to pair with this offensive coordinator, to be probably the face of the franchise most likely.
Yeah. All right. Let me go back to Ben Johnson just for a minute, because I'm now in the "you're dead to me" phase, and I think I actually feel like you're starting to hear that. Like if you heard Mike Garafolo, I'm sure you heard this clip where he was on in Seattle. I guess he has a hit, in Seattle, and he said something to the effect of they weren't going to hire him because they thought he didn't do well in the interview, and he knew this. And so, like, to your point, I don't think we know the truth here. Like, they clearly waited to speak to him. Whether he didn't do well in the interview or not, who knows? What did he really want? I just, the spin cycle on it is hit up, hyperdrive. And I expected that, but we're in "you're dead to me" at this point with him, I think.
Yeah. Well, and here's the other part. And you and I talked about this when the season ended, I think. You don't have a baseline for Mike McDonald or a Ben Johnson or, name any of these whiz kid coordinators, Bobby Slowick, who clearly, if they wanted, by the way, I think they would have hired, right? I mean, if they really wanted Bobby Slowick, no, Adam Peters didn't have a better file on anybody probably than Bobby Slowick since he was on that San Francisco staff, yet he never seemed to be the intended target here. So I thought that was interesting. The other funny thing I'm hearing, and I don't know if you laugh about it, is they're saying, well, Bobby Slowick chose to stay with the Texans as opposed to, become the Commanders coach. I'm like, wait a minute, when did that happen? I missed that. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I missed that. Would you think he was a selection for this team, or was he already out? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of face saving going on by some agents and some coordinators out here. But anyway, all that being said, yes, for every Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, though, I think we discussed this on my show yesterday. You brought up a great one, Robert Saleh, right? Like there's other guys. Heck, there's Norv Turner, frankly, who we lived with that experience way too long here. As great of a the offensive coordinator he was in Dallas, who was not a great head coach here, did get other chances to be head coach, and it was okay, but was never great at it. So, again, it's hard to, miss something you don't know about, but it does seem like our fan base was looking for something totally fresh-faced on both sides.
Yeah.
Or Mike Vrabel, who, by the way, didn't want to work in this kind of, structure, because clearly he had structural problems with Tennessee. So anyway, I think that's kind of like once people get past all that and we see where the staff goes, maybe they'll get over it. And again, most importantly, what will the results look like? It doesn't really matter what people think about it. It's about what can Dan Quinn do once he gets on the sideline when games start to count.
I mean, honestly, look, there's a new owner, there's a new GM, there's probably going to be a new quarterback who's going to be very exciting, right? Like, because they got the number 2 pick. Who knows who that's going to be, but it's going to be someone people are going to be really pumped about. When we get around to OTAs and training camp, the last 48 hours are going to be in the wash. That's what I think. Like, I don't think in the end that, like, whatever everyone's perception was of who the person was going to be that they were going to hire, which is new, young, fresh, probably offensive coach, and that's not what you got here. I think that's not going to matter, honestly. Like this is, they didn't hire Adam Gase. You know what I mean? Like, it's not what happened here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, and that's what's interesting too, right? Because there have been Nagy, Gaze, some of these other guys that were supposed to be whiz kid offensive coordinators that failed miserably. It just wasn't a year that was stock full of those kind of candidates. Again, outside of Johnson, who, whether they wanted him or not, or he didn't want them, whatever that is. I mean, was really the guy. And Slowick, it seems like it's just too soon right now for him. And he's, was his first year as an offensive coordinator and a play caller this past season. So it doesn't look like that was ever an intent. So again, you got to play with the field that's out there. You got to, and clearly there's a lot of relationships here. I mean, there's a lot of background on Dan Quinn with Adam Peters and his Kyle Shanahan relationship, his Thomas Dimitroff relationship. I mean, he's got a good idea about who Dan Quinn is and what he is as a coach. And I think it's interesting to hear some of these stories lately. I'm sure you've heard them. Dan Quinn really wanted this job. He coveted this job and kind of knew it, week 18 when he was in Washington for that last game that, this was his hope was to get back there at some point. And I think that's fascinating. And that's kind of important, right? When you hire somebody, they actually want to be there and have a vision for your job. I think that's kind of lost sometimes.
Like, here's the other one, too, I keep hearing a lot of. Offensive coaches are winning these days and defensive coaches aren't. And I'm sitting there like listening to this going, well, then I guess 5 of the 8 teams who hired a coach here in this cycle are stupid. Or I guess, is everyone in Seattle freaking out that they hired a defensive coordinator today? Or is everyone in Atlanta freaking out because they hired Raheem Morris, who has the same great reputation around the league and is a retread? Like, I don't understand that. Like this idea that like the offensive coaches wins and the defensive ones don't, and therefore you pick the wrong guy if you pick the defensive head coach. Like I don't get that. I don't know where you've landed on all of that.
Yeah, I find it's funny because again, Belichick ran the roost for how long as the defensive head coach? You know, Bill Parcells was pretty good in his day. And again, there's guys like Dan Campbell. I mean, he's a tight end, but is he an offensive coach? Is he? I don't know. I think he's a leader of men, right? I think John Harbaugh falls in that category. Even though he's a special team, was a special teams background and a little bit of defense before that as well. But I kind of look him more as the leader of men. Mike Tomlin, even though he's a defensive guy, I look at him as the leader of men. You know what I mean? These are the things. That's what I think Antonio Pierce is ultimately. And Raheem Morris, you just mentioned as well. I mean, these are guys that are leaders. D'Amico Ryan's the defensive guy, but also a leader. I mean, that's the most important part of it. I think that we kind of forget here. And I think with Quinn, what's going to be, again, huge is the staff that he assembles around him. And what did he learn, right? What did you learn from your first go round in the mistakes, and how do you kind of go about fixing that? Because there have been a lot of coaches, and we missed. Look, it didn't work here with Rivera, right? This was his second go around Super Bowl losing coach as well, and it didn't work for him. But he also had a lot of other things on his plate that he probably shouldn't have ever had, right? Like being in charge of personnel, which was not his strong suit clearly. And, as he admitted at the end, he really was never coaching, which I don't get that impression with Dan Quinn. I guess we'll find out more next week when they have this presser. I got a feeling Dan Quinn's going to run Dan Quinn's defense. He's not going to let somebody else run it. They might hire a defensive coordinator, but he's going to be, very involved in the defense. I would be surprised if he wasn't even the guy who's calling the defense during the games. Yeah,
I agree. All right, so let's look ahead a little bit here. Have you started thinking about which of these quarterbacks you want?
So it's funny you say that. So, of course, look, a lot of people are hung up on Caleb Williams, local kid, all that stuff. I mean, I think there is a bit of a recency file that says maybe local is not better with the Commanders because that's not always been the best scenario. We also don't know what the Bears are going to do. More than likely, if you were the Bears and you were going to move back, you wouldn't just slide back one slot, right? You would slide back further because you would get more, and unless you have other trades lined up to just fall back on the second spot, and then slide back some more at that point. Because it looks like for now, and again this is early February, that it's going to be 2 quarterbacks or 3 quarterbacks, 1, 2, 3, whatever order you think it is. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. Is it Caleb Williams? Jaden Daniels, Drake May. Hey, maybe Drake May. I talked to Wes Durham yesterday, who of course does ACC football. And he tells me Tim Hasselbeck absolutely loves Drake May. He's the best prospect he's watched in the last 15 years in college football at the position. So I'm like, whoa, okay, maybe I need to go back and rewatch Drake May, even though the season wasn't the best. It kind of had some Sam Howell vibes, if you will, his final season at Carolina. But obviously Drake May's a much taller guy than Sam Howell is. It's not going to have maybe the issue Sam has sometimes with the pass rush and the passing lanes. So that's an interesting thing. I mean, Daniels, I think you got to, look, if this Chip Kelly stuff's real, okay, Jaden Daniels is my quarterback, right? I mean, that's the kind of, that's clearly the quarterback you need if Chip Kelly's your OC. I don't know if I really believe it, but it is fascinating that this is leaking out now that Chip Kelly has interest in offensive coordinator jobs. Now, I know that'll probably make our fans want to throw up, but he as a non-head coach, if he wasn't the head coach, I mean, as just the offensive guy, I think does have some huge innovation about him. I mean, people have stolen from what he's done over the years, right? That Oregon offense is very interesting. And remember, his early time in Philly, they were successful. He actually went to the playoffs multiple seasons. It was the end. And
Michael Vick was amazing with him.
Well, again, the other problem with Chip was he was the guy that when he had personnel, right? He got too much power, and then that ruined him. He made some terrible decisions running off some of their best players. Deshaun Jackson, LaShawn McCoy, of course, and Jeremy Maclin eventually. So that was the thing that really killed Chip. But anyway, that's fascinating. So I think you have to have it. Just again, depends on your coordinator. If you're one of these San Francisco coordinators, whether it's one of the Kubiak kids or Brian Griese coming in, maybe May makes more sense, or Caleb Williams if you can get to him. So I think that's kind of where I am right now. It's still really early. I got to see the coordinator first before I can say, hey, what quarterback makes the most sense.
I actually think the coordinator hire is the tell of what they're going to do. Like if they bring in someone like Chip Kelly, they are clearly not taking Drake May. They're taking either Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. If they do take someone who runs a more, typical standard NFL pocket quarterback offense, well, then that's the tell. You know who they're taking. So it's interesting. I think that they're going to be telling you out loud exactly which quarterback they're taking over the next week or so when they hire the offensive coordinator here.
Absolutely. And I think it's going to be, interesting to see how they mesh these staffs, because I think we're going to hear a lot of Cowboys people hearing some of that already. Some rumors about on the defensive side who we're going to see Dan Quinn bring in here. And then I'm also, figuring that, probably Adam Peters has got some guys he's going to mention for the offensive side, which would probably have Kyle's blessing as well. And, I think Kyle Shanahan here, which is kind of fascinating, right? That he's kind of, in the equation again here in Washington in a sense, because there's clearly stuff that he's been very successful with, and people have, certainly been interested in his staffs in the past. And I think, this is certainly a situation where it looks like you could certainly go to that tree here and grab one of these guys off that staff. And Brian Greasy is really interesting to me because of a couple of things. Number one, nobody spends more time with Brock Purdy during these games if you watch. And two, he's the guy who put Brock Purdy on the 49ers radar. They've given him credit for that, because when he was doing games for ESPN, he was pumping up Brock Purdy to them, and they said, well, you got any late round quarterbacks you think we'd be interested in that you've seen? And he brought up Brock Purdy immediately. So I think that's kind of interesting stuff too. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But yeah, you're right. I mean, if it's Chip Kelly, we know who the quarterback or the type of quarterback has got to be. If it's not Chip Kelly, it's one of these Kyle Shanahan offenses, then it's probably more on the lines of a Drake May.
All right, Jack. All right, last thing. Who you got in the Super Bowl? Who do you think's going to win it?
Man, I tell you, it's hard to bet against the Chiefs, right? It's just they're in Steve Spagnuolo. My goodness, is he the best postseason coordinator we've seen in a while in defense? I mean, it's nuts. I mean, think about those Giants signature wins he had as the D coordinator there, and then what he was able to do last week with Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Although I think the Ravens really outsmarted themselves in that football game. I don't know what Todd Monken was thinking. Not running it more. But anyway, I still like the Chiefs. I still believe in the Chiefs a lot. And, I think if there is a team, obviously, that can beat them, it's the 49ers. I think the 49ers probably have the best overall roster, but the best player on the field is Pat Mahomes.
100%. All right, Jack. Great to talk to you. I'll catch up with you soon. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Bram. Take it easy.
All right. When we come back, Ozhan. Be right back. Bram, what's your show? ESPN 630 Sports Capital. When Josh Harris and the group bought the Commanders, they bought a beer for everybody down at the bar to, celebrate.
The bullpen. There's not just a generic bar.
Right. I don't remember which bar.
The bar.
Yeah, the bar. You're at the bar, Joe. So so David Rubenstein buys the Orioles and throws them an ace.
Yes.
One day. So, I guess you guys weren't that poor, were you, John? Wow. So that is a boss move on day one. He isn't even the full owner yet, and he went, go ahead, go get the ace. And they did, and acquired Corbin Burnes, which we've been waiting for 2 years for them. So they're going to be shot out of a cannon this year. Stavros is pumped. The content goes over to baseball now.
Just waiting for that one to happen.
Yeah.
I want to know how that conversation went. It's like, hi, Mike. Yes, it's David. Oh, yeah. Hey, boss. How's it going? Mm-hmm. Just throw a name out there.
Got any aces?
Let me know who you like. And he's like, anybody? He's like, anybody. And he goes, Brewers have 1 year left on Corbin Burnes' contract. I think we could get him. He's like, do it.
Yeah. That's what happened.
Yes. If that's how it went.
He said to him, get an ace.
Right. Or he said, no, I honestly think he said to Mike Elias, you clearly haven't been able to make all the moves you want to make. What's one you want to make that is bold and you need me to sign off on? And he probably said, I need to go get a starting pitcher. We have too many prospects.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened last night.
Yeah. So the move that I think we've all been waiting for them to make for 2 straight trade deadlines and now 2 off seasons occurred overnight with that sale.
You get one postseason run with Corbin
You get one postseason run. But I'll take it.
Oh, of course.
The boss move would be to do 2 of them.
Oh, well, I mean, I think that's coming. I think, honestly.
They have no payroll.
Right, correct.
They could easily go get another one at this point.
The one that was shocking everyone in the MLB last night was the Orioles have the number 1 prospect line in the league, and they protected all of their top 5. These guys were in their top.
One postseason run.
Right.
Rizzo's like, well, it's only one postseason run. See?
By the way, he went 10-8 last year, 3.39 ERA. That's his worst ERA of his career.
Worst.
3.39.
He's got crazy strikeout numbers, too. I mean, they have a frontline ace.
200 strikeouts, and then I think the most important part is this one, 193 and 2/3 inning. He's also goes deep into games. And if you and I want to repeat what we talked about in August last year, I told you the Orioles relievers could not carry them into the postseason. And that's exactly what their undoing was when they played Texas.
Also just notable here, 807 runs scored by the Orioles, 728 by the Brewers. It's a big difference.
Yes, correct. Exactly right.
I mean, it's a big difference.
Right.
So he's going to get run support here, too.
They won 101 games without an ace, and they're about to add an ace.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. And they're going to add one more, I think. I seriously think they're going to make a trade for one more. Whether it's now or at the deadline, I couldn't tell you. But I think they're trading for one more.
Britt Giroli, Ken Rosenthal had a great piece in The Athletic about the sale itself.
Mm-hmm.
The headline is, insiders believe the $1.725 billion price tag was quote-unquote low.
Yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Now, I don't know.
Right.
Like, they weren't going to get more than the Mets. The Mets got 2.5.
Yep.
Remember, the Angels tried to sell and couldn't get a price.
That's right.
The Nationals tried to sell and couldn't get a price. We know that one's complicated because of the Masson thing, and I
Sure.
think we're all hoping that that's going to get clarified now, one way or the other, now that we have hopefully a willing partner to deal with Ted or baseball or whoever to get this out of the courts and do something that helps both franchises, whatever that may be. And that might just be wishful thinking, but hopefully that'll work itself out.
Yep.
So there's all of that. But this story then goes into, and I actually think the bigger headline is the stuff that they talk about later, which is this kind of, it didn't come out of nowhere, but the way the Angelos family was positioning everything, they never made it feel like this was imminent. In fact, pushed back at this idea that was imminent, and maybe they were just lying about it, okay? And it could be as simple as that. Or we don't really know, and maybe they just got boxed into the corner because they didn't get the things they wanted. You know, they didn't leverage it. They didn't get the land space that they wanted. They couldn't really move. Like whatever, all the stuff that happened that like kind of put them in this position. Wes Moore had them kind of tied to, you're going to take this lease. We're not handing you the Inner Harbor, deal with it. You know, like, and that could be part of it too. And then there's this other part in this piece that talks a lot about cash flow problems, business problems. And I will tell you, I have very, very good sources that have worked with this team that immediately when they saw this texted me and said just that. They go, don't believe that he just wanted to sell the team. He goes, the biggest issue that they've had is there is a mismanagement of money that's been going on within here, and they believe in the elder father's law firm that has caused all of these cascading problems. And it makes sense to me because they have not spent money on anything, and it took a new person to walk in the door and go, what's our payroll?
Right.
What do you need?
Exactly.
Go do it.
Yeah.
And they just went and did for a high-tier, high-priced player because they have the cash flow to do it. So that apparently was happening here too. And so that's also the good news for Orioles fans. They're getting a group in there that clearly don't have the financial issues that were going on and kind of strapping the team a little bit.
I think this goes back to what I originally said when it came out that Rubenstein was buying the team. I think he called John Angelos and said, dude, I'm going to buy the team, but I can't wait for your father to pass away and let the team blow up on its own.
Correct.
As in, I need to let me start managing this now. What will it take? And he probably said $1.7 billion. He said, fine. And I want to start making moves right now because the team is ready to go right now.
They're not technically under his control yet.
Oh, of course. Oh, right.
That has not been, I mean,
right.
You're reading things like they're fast tracking it. Okay, I believe that, but it's still not under their control. Like I said this about Josh Harris, like he didn't get the team until a certain point where he could not do anything. So you had to be, Like this last offseason was tough for Ron, tough for the Harris. It was tough for everybody because the deal wasn't done. They could not authorize to do anything like that. And it was a tough offseason. That's not what's happening here. They walked in the door and said, I'm going to greenlight things happening, and I'll front the money for them, obviously.
Yep, exactly right.
So they're already in control, clearly.
This was essentially if the Commanders were Super Bowl contenders, you're fast-tracking those moves even if you're not the actual owner yet. Because remember we were joking about it of like, does Harris want Lamar? Is he calling them saying make that deal even though he's not the official owner? Granted, it was never going to happen, but I think this is a little bit of that. It was, I'm running this thing now, and I want to win this year because the window is here and it's open. Make the move, and that's exactly what happened.
All right, let me take a quick break. John Keim's weekly Friday visit is about the hiring of a new head coach. He'll join us next. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital. You know what today is, Callow, don't you? It's 2-2.
Oh, two-year anniversary of 2/2/22.
Correct, which is Happy Commander Day. 2 years ago on this day, they became the Washington Commanders. And if I told you 2 years ago that in 2 years, Dan Snyder will not own the team, there will be a new structure here. Magic Johnson will be part of the ownership group. We'll have a true GM for the first time in a very long time, a separation of powers. And Dan Quinn's going to be the head coach. Would you have believed any of that?
Throwing Peter Angelo sold the Orioles, too.
Right.
I would say, what alternate future timeline did you come from?
And then I think in 2 years when we do 226, we'll be talking about a new name again, maybe. It's a possibility, right?
One thing at a time.
Yes, as we welcome in John Keim from ESPN on the John Keim Report. Want to go down memory lane of 2/2/22, or you want to just move forward here, John? What do you want to do?
Well, can we at least table the name thing for 2 weeks after they make a move?
Well, we got to move on to the next thing, John. We have to move on to the next. You know how this works. We've done the coach. We got to move on to the next thing.
Quarterback. Okay. The next thing is a quarterback.
Actually, the next thing is an offensive coordinator. To be real honest about it.
Yes. There you go. Agree.
Okay. All right. So John does not want to relive helicopters from Channel 4, a rollout from the Today Show. You don't want to do any of that.
Also because we go there and the seats were frozen.
Yeah, I was there too, John. It was terrible. It was terrible.
Yeah, I had to brush off this frost from the seat, and it was quite a day.
Yeah, yes, it was. Yesterday was one as well. Not unlike 2/2/22, 2/1/24 had a mixed reaction to a decision that the team made. I was surprised at how loud a faction of the fan base was in disappointment over the hiring of Dan Quinn. So what was just your general, before we get into the process and all that stuff, what was just your general reaction to the reaction of the hiring of Dan Quinn?
Well, I wasn't surprised because it was there all along. There were a lot of people who they probably didn't know a lot of who these coordinators were a month or two ago. And then suddenly it's like they couldn't live without him. And so, I don't know, what do you really know about these people other than the name and other than oh my God, this guy's a great play caller. But do you know how they interviewed? Do you know, what's their staff? And you look at Detroit, Dan Campbell runs that show in Detroit, John Harbaugh. I don't know what kind of head coaches those guys would have been. To me, they were there's a risk there. It could be Sean, and I didn't hear anybody of these guys described as the next Sean McVay, but let's say you're the next, is it a Kevin O'Connell or is it Adam Gase? Don't know. So, but I understand the desire for the flashy toy, and the perception have been if they gotten Peters and Ben Johnson, it's a grand slam. Well, how the hell do you know? We don't know what kind of guys these coaches are going to be. And again, I would say this too. So I'm going to get to the Dan Quinn thing in a second, but with Ben Johnson, if he's withdrawing like that, and he wants to save unfinished business, wife likes it there. Is that a guy who thinks he's ready to be a head coach, and is that the guy you want? Do you know what I'm saying?
Of course.
And so, so you have to look at things beyond just what's the name and what's the hype around the name. Now, let's go to Dan Quinn. So I knew that there was going to be this reaction, Bram. I knew it because we saw it all along. Anytime you bring up his name, please God, no, and blah, blah, blah. All I know is every single person I talk to in the NFL says the same thing about the guy. It does, there are people who, Matt LaFleur is a head coach with Green Bay. He worked under Dan Quinn. He was passed over as an OC after Kyle Shanahan left. And yet he's a guy that really, really likes Dan Quinn. Not just likes him, but thinks he's a really good coach. I talked to someone else from a different organization. What do you think? Excellent hire, all caps. I mean, it just went on, and this same person was like, the people they know in Dallas are disappointed because you're losing a really good defensive coordinator. So, it's just the reaction doesn't match the coach. Now, is he going to be great? I don't know, but he's coming to a different situation than Ron Rivera did, and then what he had in Atlanta, and I think all of that will make a difference. So, I think he's a good hire. He was, nobody else was ever a slam dunk, despite what is out there. Nobody else was ever a slam dunk.
The interesting part is what you just talked about, and this is what I've run into too. Every single person I talk to in the league is like, This is a home run. And they're like, He's a great communicator. He's a great leader, which are the qualities they said that they were looking for in somebody. And that so the league circles are all going, great move, great hire. And there's a portion of the fan base that like recoiled from it. I haven't seen a chasm like this before. Like this isn't like people were reminding me of the Jim Fossil thing where publicly when that got out, people were like, do not do it. But there was nobody in the league insider lane that was going, oh, you should not listen to the fans and just go do it. There's a wide gap here between the people who work in the league that think they did the right thing and a select group. It's not everybody, obviously. A select group of people in the fan base who didn't like it. Yeah.
Well, and I think I'm just going to stick with the people who have worked with him, played for him, coached against him, coached with him, etc., rather than anybody else, because they're the ones who are informed in this guy. And like Jim Fossil, I remember that time. I covered it. You were around too for that. Jim Fossil did not have this reputation that Dan Quinn does with other people. Like there was another reputation with Jim Fossil that I'm like, I'm not sure that's what you want, right? So no, this isn't going to be something like that. All I know is the people who are informed on this guy all say the same thing. And I've said this throughout. Like I would tell people the guy here, the best things about is Dan Quinn. I've said that multiple times not just for a reason, because this is what my reporting has taken me. It's not the team feeding me this. It's people from multiple organizations, people who worked with him during a bad period in Atlanta, during a good period in Atlanta, people who played for him. Logan Paulson loves him. I talked to Chris Chester, who played here and there. Chester felt, I said, that was his favorite coach he's played for, and he played for all these other guys too. So, and I don't know if he's going to be a great coach here. I don't know that. I didn't know if the others would, so I heard concerns about Ben Johnson. I heard concerns about Mike McDonald. I heard concerns about how good was Ben Johnson's first interview, right? And what did that reveal? And so, but you give him another shot. If he has a really good interview, then maybe he is a guy. But they weren't flying to Detroit to hire him. They were flying to Detroit to get more information on him. The notion that he was a slam dunk is just. It certainly looked like it was trending that way, but he still needed to have a good interview to get the job.
Yeah.
So, I just don't but I don't, again, the reaction does not match the reality of who this guy is or as a coach. And based on what I've heard, I'm not trying to be some mouthpiece for the organization because they don't need me to be that. I'm just telling you what other people have told me. That's it.
Now, you also know, though, and I know this too, and we're very, acutely aware of public perception. And it isn't everybody, but there was people saying all along that, we're not sure we love this. And they did it anyway, which I believe you should make the decision you think is best for your organization. And you don't listen to the fans when they tell you not to specifically do something, especially something that like this. So what was I'm sure you've talked to people. They had to know there would be a bit of a reaction to it as well.
They don't understand it.
So what have you heard from them, behind closed doors? What are they telling you about the reasons why they did this and dealing with that they knew it wouldn't be a 100% let's go throw the parade after this hire?
I think, first of all, they knew. I think there's definitely some people who are just kind of shaking their heads at it. I know I would say this, and I know some of them that I talked to are very excited. And that in the end, especially, he was a clear choice for them. I think going into the process, I don't know that he certainly wouldn't have been the clear choice. I think Ben Johnson would have been a guy. I don't think, again, I was told early at the beginning that there wasn't really one guy who was like the Adam Peters type of the coaching candidates. However, I would have said at that time that Ben Johnson would have been, you go into it, it's like Sam Howell going into the offseason is the favorite of the quarterback derby, right? Then how do you come out of it? And so going into it, I think he would have been certainly at the top of the list, but not a like have them at all cost list. But anyways, so I say that just because I think it wasn't like they feel like they lost out on their guy. I think they settled on the guy that they really liked, and the guy that, you talk about leadership and communication and vision and all that. It's important to be aligned with that. And if you don't have all that, it's going to be a struggle. And so I think, but anyways, all I know is they're very excited about who they have. And I do think, I think I think the good thing is, like you said, that they didn't listen to, oh my gosh, there's all this angst. The owner who did that is the one that all these people wanted out of here. And it's funny because there was a segment that, and this is what I don't get, Bram, there's a segment that didn't like how Dan Snyder was as an owner, but yet every time something like this comes up, like, well, the guy who would have done what you wanted to do, you wanted out of here.
Right.
So, you have an owner who's a lot more patient and just process-oriented and clearly is going to, trust what he knows and what he hears from his people. And, time will tell if this is the best hire or not. I mean, who knows? But I think he's a good coach.
Let me get out of
by everything I've heard.
Let me get out of the hyper local part of it, which is just the general reaction. And it wasn't all bad, obviously, but there clearly was. I think the problem was that they were primed for a specific type. It didn't have to be Ben Johnson, but they wanted new, young, fresh, offensive minded, and that didn't happen. So I think that's the basis of this. But let me do the other perception.
Think you're right.
Yeah, let's do the other perception part, which is the national part. They were the last to fill the job. It is Kevin Burkhardt was literally on the Fox broadcast of the NFC Championship game saying Ben Johnson was going to get the job. Boomer Esiason sitting on the set saying Ben Johnson's going to get the job. We all believed that he was probably going to get the job. All of a sudden he pulls out, doesn't even take the final interview. And whether he truly was the person of interest or not, it's perceived that way. So it looks like they got passed over. So how do you think they're thinking about last to fill the position and not with the guy that everyone thought they were going to get?
So here's a couple of things, too. And all along, and this is why when Boomer Esiason said it's a lock, I never, ever thought that. And you and I have talked a lot about this. I thought he was going to be the guy, but I never thought he was a lock. And what I also would always say, and we know this, they were very tight-lipped about this search. So when people would come out and say that stuff, well, you're not hearing this from them. And so, you know what I mean? So I think there was just the belief that this is an attractive job and this is a top candidate, so it makes sense, right? But, I know over the weekend, Adam Schefter put it out, and I would always hear it's not a lock. It's not. And with the timetable, on Monday, I heard it would be Thursday or Friday. So it wasn't like, oh my gosh, these guys are out. Now what? You're going to scramble? No, just hire this guy. Maybe open it up. They were never going to open it back up. If they were going to open it back up with other candidates, why wouldn't they include those guys in the first place? They clearly like these three better than anybody else that was still out there. So, I only say that so when McDonald decides to go to Seattle, I think that's an interesting one too. And I'm not going to say that they wouldn't have hired him because I don't know that. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Dan Quinn was a second option. Nobody else was offered the job. So, but I think it cut down on their options, but they liked him all along because his interviews were really good. I mean, he interviews well. I've seen him in interview situations. So, I don't know, Bram. But I think all that said, this perception, if you're the family, here's the other thing, and you know this. So you get the new owner, people are excited. You get the GM that everybody wanted, now people are excited. And Ben Johnson was the guy that everybody had to have, and he's going to come here. And then when he doesn't, I get that there's a letdown, but I also you have to understand what you don't know about this process or about how they're going about it or about what does it say that somebody for 2 years in a row now has turned down this opportunity to become a head coach. And, so I think there's a lot of things you have to kind of step back and look at. Now, again, doesn't mean Dan Quinn's going to be a success here. There's a lot of work to be done. But, I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering questions. I'm just rambling. But
yeah, well, I think it's, I'll be interested to hear how they position all of this because, they have to position it in some way because it has this look and feel of they targeted someone and that person, decided not to take their job. But he also didn't take anybody's job. So I think that's different.
Yeah,
it's not like he made a choice. Yeah,
and I don't think, like, in the end, he had to go impress them still.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think he was not like, oh my gosh, now what? This guy, I think it was, okay, go through the process, see how it goes, make the decision. Clearly they were not in a rush to do this. Whether that's good or bad or right or wrong, they weren't.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the OC part of this. Chip Kelly's name is getting floated out there. What are you hearing about him? Do you think that's a serious candidate to be the offensive coordinator of the team?
I can't say that. I think it would. I would look at like a guy like Clint Kubiak or someone like that from San Francisco.
Well, Clint Kubiak just went to New Orleans, so he's off the board.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I take that back. I didn't know that. I was on the phone. Sorry.
Or at least that's being reported. I mean, they're in the Super Bowl, so I'm surprised it's being reported, but it's being reported that that's where he is going, that he'll be the next OC of the Saints.
So if that's the case, then I think another name to look there is Brian Fleury, who's also in that system. So, but that would. So I don't think it'll be Chip Kelly. I know that his name has been attached to him. I think that he's a name that Dan Quinn would certainly at least look at, it sounds like, but I don't know that it's going to be ultimately who it is. So I think there's some other guys. I think, like I said, Brian Fleury might be one to watch. I mean, there's a connection to Adam Peters out in San Francisco. He's been out there for a few years. I think, he's interviewed for some other jobs. So we'll see. I don't know that for sure. But I don't think it'll be Chip Kelly, but I can't say that for sure.
Okay. And on the defensive side, you're assuming that it is going to be off the Dallas staff, correct? That's going to follow him here? Yeah.
Joe Witt, one of their secondary coach there, I think pass game coordinator, is a guy that I heard that he was that Dan Quinn was telling teams that he would hire. And so like that's the guy that I'm anticipating, but it's not done.
And on all of this, honestly, and I feel this way. I know the last couple of days have been awkward a little bit, in the perception part of the whole thing. When we get around to OTAs, I think everyone's going to see probably a new quarterback that got picked very high in the draft, the new GM, the new owner, the new coach. I think this is all going to be in the wash. I mean, you agree that, like, I don't think people are going to be harping on this, like, however you feel about his hiring. I don't think they will.
Yeah. I think eventually I think if people start to see, like, other moves being made and the way they're going about it, and I think a lot of it's going to come down to your trust in, like, Harrison and Adam Peters as well. And it's not like Josh Harris is going to be involved in he's not going to be into doing, like, pretending to watch film to give his opinion on players like maybe somebody else in that chair had done. But it'll be Adam Peters and what he puts together and what happens there. And what kind of draft you have. So yeah, I think eventually people are going to move past this, and then listen, the proof is always during the season. I mean, like if you go out there and win, people will be happy. That's all they want. But I also think for a lot of people wanted this to be perceived as like this great off season because you got every hot name out there, and I think the ideal situation for these fans, it seems, would have been Adam Peters, Ben Johnson, trade up to get Caleb Williams, that kind of thing. Like, but that was, so you can still have a really good offseason with what you have, and I think they're positioned to do that. So I would also say, I would caution people, like, they have a lot of cap space, but they also have, like, they have to sign like 7 or 8 more players.
That's right.
To get to the 51.
Correct. With
that cap space. So it's not like they're going to go out there and sign, like, a bunch of huge names all the time. They'll probably get a couple, but it's not going to be this wild spending spree because they have to take care of some of their own and just add more to that to get to the rule of 51.
I've been harping on this for a few weeks now. I know they have a ton of cap space. They also have a roster to fill out first. So, like, it's a little deceiving, like, with the amount of cap space. They will have money to spend for sure, but, like, not to the level that everyone thinks they do. They have an incomplete roster right now, so they got to fill that. There's a lot of work to do. All right, last thing, and this has just popped up too, and I wonder if you've heard any movement. I know there's been a lot going on with all the coaching cycle and everything, but apparently the RFK bill is moving forward in the House next week. And there is what appears to be some momentum towards at least that passing and heading toward taking the next step towards potentially getting passed. What are you hearing about the stadium? Is that even on the radar at this point? Yeah, no.
I've been on the phone nonstop about coaches.
All right.
So the last thing I checked on the stadium stuff is I'm going to guess that nothing has really changed. Like the earliest that people that I talked to about a month ago or so on it would have been like 2025 before something gets done, because you still have to get through and pass it. It still has to pass. Then you have to have the state legislatures in Maryland and Virginia, and then like negotiations with the city. You know, is that something that's going to get done? I think there's still a long way to go in this. That's all. Like I said, 2025 was the last target date that I heard. That was probably the likely one, but I'm too knee deep in the coaching stuff at this point.
All right. I'm not going to talk to you next Friday because I'll be out in Vegas. So I might as well just ask you now, who do you like in the Super Bowl?
Man, you know, I'd like to see Kyle Shanahan get one. But man, it's just hard to go against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. You know, so I'd probably lean there. So, and their defense is really good. But, you know, I'd like to see Kyle get one. I think he's done a really good job. And but yeah, that's kind of where I would lean at this point.
Okay, so that's not a pick. All right, thank you. I appreciate it. You're taking the Chiefs. Okay, all right.
Yeah, it's hard to go against them. So,
all right.
You know, but I mean, you know, I'm holding on 12.
You have no future in prognostication media after that hard, soft take that you've taken on the Super Bowl.
I don't want it.
All right. Have a good week. I'll talk to you when I get back from Vegas. I appreciate it. All right. It's John Keim from ESPN, John Keim Reporter. Take a quick break. We'll be right back. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital. Hi, everyone.
It's funny, when you mentioned 2-2-22, I had to go look at my pictures just to see like what I had from that day, because I don't really go out and cover stuff.
You went to it. That's right. You went.
I
actually didn't go to that.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't go because I didn't think I'd make it back in time. That's why I didn't go.
Yeah. And I just don't do this often, but like Keim was right. It was so, for a franchise that was rebranding, that was 90 years old, it was such a... Outside, the seats were frozen. The tent had barely any heat. They didn't show the NBC thing live so we could see it. We had to find out on our phones. Like,
they didn't really practice how they were going to roll it out on the NBC thing. Remember that?
Yeah.
Tell them.
The crest was wrong.
The crest was wrong.
I mean, now, granted.
Well, they'll argue with you it wasn't technically, but we all know it's the 91 season.
Yes.
Yes, the Super Bowl was won in 1992, and there was like a big back and forth argument about that. But they changed it. They changed it.
My parents have jackets that have 91, 87, and 78. Did I get was that the, or no, 91, 87, 83. Sorry.
Yeah.
We have like plenty of stuff with those 3 years on them.
Yeah.
That has never deviated from those years on them.
That's right.
So, right. I will say this, for all the bad things Dan Snyder says. Dan Snyder was picking up one free piece of merch if you went and bought stuff that day. So I have a free Commander's hoodie that I got from Dan.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah, seriously. I actually went,
Happy Groundhog Day, everybody.
I remember this actually because Lauren, who used to work here, texted me and was like, hey, can you grab me a T-shirt? And I went back in, and they were like, oh, it's free because you're only buying one item.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, he did at least hook it up a little bit there.
Your boy Kingsbury is the new OC in Vegas.
Not my boy.
That guy is going to have quite the penthouse.
So you still with the same girl?
I don't know, but he is going to have an incredible... When I talk about the real estate I'd buy in Vegas, it's not the same real estate he'd buy in Vegas. He's the one who's going to get the really cool penthouse.
I wonder if he sold his house in Arizona. Like, I would have held on to that.
That thing was an Architectural Digest, and I'm not exaggerating.
I would have held on to that one.
Mm-hmm. It was a piece of art.
Right.
They showed pictures of him like watching TV or something in it, and it was like a Monet. It's like, wow, look at that place.
They are still together, by the way.
Oh, good for him.
Polish model Veronika Bialik.
Oh, she doesn't date Mike Zimmer?
A little older, I think that one was. No, she was Swedish.
Oh, I saw Mike Zimmer. His name popped up for the Dallas defensive coordinator job. Maybe.
Okay, all right.
Ron? Oh, it's going to be a big week.
Course, yeah.
Please happen. I just want anything to reinvigorate the whole thing.
Have they offered up Ron for Radio Row yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
I'm almost expecting that.
I'm waiting for that invitation.
I'm expecting him to do the car wash.
I'll tell you right now. I hope so. I'd love to have him on. Like, please come on. I'll be nice. Like, come on. We had a great relationship for 4 years. Come on, let's talk. We'll talk about the good old times.
The good old times.
Yeah, we'll ask about a few of the bad times. Let's some of the good old times.
All 3 good times.
We'll ask about it. Hey, we had that great one against Pittsburgh. Remember that during the pandemic?
Pittsburgh, Philly, Tampa.
Heineke diving for the pylon in the playoffs was
both Tampa games.
Yeah, both Tampa games because we weren't expected to win.
Right, yeah,
and we got a thrill ride out of that. That thing was close through 3, and I was like, we're going to pull off a miracle. And then Brady showed up and was like, watch this.
If you were able to get him before you hit the air, I would say rank your top 3 and your bottom 3.
Oh, man. Yeah, no,
bottom 3 can be on or off the field.
I haven't been offered him yet. I don't know. I'm sure he's going to be there. So, but I hope.
He loves the national media.
I would love for him to come on. I would love for him to come on. We'll have a nice, friendly chat. He knows that. We had a lot of friendly chats every Friday for 4 years. Let's have a nice, friendly chat.
It's full Pepe Sylvia of why things work the way they work, though.
Yeah, I won't lead him down that road. I will not. Let's see. Tony Romo is explaining why he told the joke of Tylor Swift is Travis Kelce's wife several times during the AFC Championship broadcast, or one of the broadcasts. And he said that he did it because it was a callback to when he was dating Jessica Simpson. And he said, someone did that to me back in the day. And they're like, oh, there's your wife. I mean your girlfriend. So sometimes the humor doesn't go over very well. So you had to recall the jokes about him and Jessica Simpson to get his joke about Tylor Swift and Travis Kelce. And as the Swifties will tell you, you don't joke about any of this. It's not funny. It's very serious. They are the Illuminati. Do not mess with it. And then secondarily, Romo's just getting criticized for literally every word or grunt that comes out of his mouth these days. And that's a tough place to be. In fact, for him, like, he's probably hating doing the media cycle because they're doing the Super Bowl.
Right.
He has to do the media cycle too.
That's right.
I'd love to have him on my show if he's available next week.
Also, it's not the same. People knew who Jessica Simpson was back then, but she was already not a B-list celebrity at that point.
She was hot property at that point.
No, she wasn't. She wasn't at her height though. Her height was when she was doing the reality show with her then husband Nick Lachey.
She wasn't that far removed from it though, right?
But no, I think she was. She was not the hot commodity you're thinking of. Like she was still known, but she was not that popular.
Right. This is different.
She had been divorced.
He's dating the most popular person in the world.
Correct. There's no comparison.
Yeah.
Literally no comparison. Now, I will say this. It was a really funny moment on Twitter where somebody said, oh, people didn't get this mad about Tony Romo and Jessica Simpson. And all the replies like, no. Everyone was heated that he was dating her because then they went on the island trip.
Well, that was their fault.
Bye week.
On the bye week, he went to Mexico with her, sat on the beach.
Yes.
Him, Witten, and Witten's girlfriend or whatever, and they were all there together. And then people were like, "Wow, you're taking the playoffs seriously." And then they lost.
Right.
And then people freaked on them.
And so I like
that's it's like the Giants boat trip curse.
Yes, that one's worse in my opinion.
That picture should be framed in every Giants fan's household because it's too amazing.
It's the best.
The boat pick.
But there had to be some revisionist correction there. It was like, no, stop it. They were just as mad about her as they were about Tylor Swift, and actually Tylor Swift was doing less. So yeah.
All right, are you ready for Tylor Swift props? Because there's 89 of them that they have in Bet Online. Which will be higher, Tylor Swift's Grammy nominations, 6, or Travis Kelce's catches in the Super Bowl? Ooh. I'm going with Travis Kelce will have a big game and will be a primary target. So 6 is a big number, but I'll go with Travis Kelce on that, and you'll get odds on that, plus 135, actually.
Taylor, though, I'm just going to try to count here. She released, 2 redone albums?
This is just nominations, though. She's already got them.
Oh,
she has 6. The
she
Grammys are
has
this
6.
weekend.
Oh, yeah.
The number's 6.
You know me. I don't pay attention to the award shows.
No, the Grammys
Yeah,
are this weekend. She already has the nominations. That's already done.
He catches more than 6, yeah.
Okay. Which will be higher? Chiefs' total Super Bowl touchdowns or Taylor Swift's Grammy Awards? She's been nominated for 6 things.
Her.
So you think she's going to get like 6 for 6, something like that?
Do the Chiefs score 5 touchdowns?
Who knows? I'm done betting against that guy.
I don't think they score 5.
I don't think they do either. Actually, I agree. It probably will be Taylor Swift.
I don't think they score 6. Like, I think they
scored
score 5.
2 last week. That's all they got.
And would
they had 2
win?
last week.
Hold on, I need to do some research real quick. Taylor Swift nominations. Because what are her nominations? This is important, actually. Because I think if they get 5 touchdowns, that's right there on the number.
Mm-hmm.
Her nominations are, let's see here. Oh, God. It has every single award for like every single award show.
We could do that at a later date if you like.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Song of the Year, Anti-Hero. Record of the Year, Anti-Hero. Best Pop Solo Performance, Anti-Hero. So 3 of them hinge on that one song. Karma with Ice Spice, your girl Ice Spice, as Best Pop Duo Group Performance. That will win. That will win.
I've heard Ice Spice's new song, by the way, which is, I can't repeat it on the air. It is terrible.
It's not good.
It's terrible.
Then there's Midnights for Album of the Year and Best Pop Vocal Album of the Year. She will win both of those. So that's 3 in the bag. So Anti-Hero just needs to win 2 more. I go
5.
Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift.
I agree. Let's see. Will Taylor Swift wear a Travis Kelce jersey during the Super Bowl?
No,
yes or no?
No, she hasn't worn a jersey the entire time.
No is the heavy favorite.
Yeah, she hasn't worn a jersey the whole time.
Let's see. What will Taylor Swift's bottoms look like? Shorts, skirt, trousers, dress, leggings, or the long shot on the board, leotard?
They're in Vegas. I go skirt. I go skirt on that one.
Taylor Swift's headwear, hat or knit cap. She's been pulling knit cap, but they've also been in cold locales.
Can I go
We're going to
no?
be Vegas inside.
Can I go no?
I'm going to go with none.
I'm going to go with none, yeah.
Yeah, I think this is an off the board none.
Yeah.
Will the NFL shop offer a Swift Chiefs jersey before week 1 of the 2024 season?
Ooh. No, I don't think so.
Will Taylor Swift's travel from Japan to Las Vegas be shown? I think if her people let them do it, which I'm going to go with, they're going to say no to that.
No, I actually go no regardless on this. I don't think you can go that deep. I don't think you can go that deep on the Super Bowl broadcast. I don't think you can.
Will Taylor Swift mention Kelce and the Chiefs at the Tokyo show?
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see. Will a picture of Swift and Kelce be shown during the pregame?
Yes.
To be.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Because they're going to have to show her walking in or saying hi to him or whatever.
Who will be seen first during the national anthem? Taylor Swift, Jason Kelce, or both at the same time?
Ooh.
That's a good one.
I go both at the same time.
Yeah, they're probably standing next to each other. Is Jason Kelce wearing a shirt at the Super Bowl?
I think he is.
You think he is?
Yeah.
How many times will you see Taylor Swift live during the game? The over-under is 5.5.
Under. I go under.
They also put a time on it. How much time? 40.5 seconds.
Ooh, that's a good line.
It is a good line because it was 44 seconds in the last one. And that's why everybody's laughing at all the MAGA people going crazy because they're like, she was on TV for 40 seconds, right?
I go
of
over.
The football game.
I go over because they are going to have to do a live read for the Grammys at some point, and that's going to push it over.
They've got to show her.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Taylor Swift's first person shown next to at the Super Bowl. Donna Kelce, Brittany Mahomes, Jason Kelce, Ed Kelce, and then, let's see, Gigi Hadid, Mike Tyson's on the board.
Mike Tyson's
on the board for that one.
Brittany. It's Brittany Mahomes. They're always together.
What will happen first? Either team scoring a touchdown or Taylor Swift's live shot appearance? That's a tough one.
Taylor. Because if Kelce catches one on the first drive.
Which Taylor Swift song will be broadcast to break first? Anti-Hero, Shake It Off, Bad Blood, You Belong With Me, Look What You Made Me Do, Blank Space, I Knew You Were Trouble, or Cardigan?
Shake It Off. Shake It Off.
Shake It Off, you get 11-4 odds on
Shake
that
it
one.
Off, yeah.
I don't think they're going to do the deep dive Swift songs.
They're not doing Cardigan. It's an acoustic jump.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing any of that one. Who will say Taylor Swift first, Jim Nantz or Tony Romo?
Tony. I think Tony says it first.
Who will be shown live the most times, Tylor Swift or Olivia Culpo?
Ooh,
now
that's a good one.
That's a really, really, really good one.
Taylor, I think you have to, but if McCaffrey has a massive game, they're going to show her. So that is influenced of who has the bigger game.
She is on the board of who will appear on stage with Usher during the halftime show, which I do not believe will happen. Here are the others that you can bet on. Ludacris.
Yeah, because if they perform, so.
Lil Jon.
Yep. I think you have to parlay Lil Jon and them together.
Will.i.am.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Alicia Keys.
Okay.
Nicki Minaj, who's starting a tour.
This is all the people that they have songs together with, or he has songs together with. I'm sorry.
P. Diddy. No way.
No
I don't know if you've read the news lately.
No chance
but
he's joining.
No chance.
No.
DJ Khaled.
Okay.
21 Savage. Beyonce.
No, that's not happening.
Jay-Z. No. 50 Cent. Already did it. Already did it. He was hanging upside down with the one a couple years ago with Dr. Dre and all that.
Sweating.
Or Madonna at 50-1.
Madonna's not doing it.
No.
There's one.
No, she's the headliner if she's going to do something like that.
There has to be one off.
She also looks crazy these days. I don't know if you've seen her.
She does. There has to be one off the board here, and I think you'll agree with me. The reason Usher is doing the halftime show is because he has a Vegas residency.
Mm-hmm.
So who's the other Vegas residency that joins him?
I don't know.
I think we need to have like Adele on the board as a long shot.
Here's my favorite one, too. Will Travis Kelce propose to Tylor Swift on the field?
Nope, it's not that.
No is plus 10,000.
Yeah, it's not happening.
And my favorite backup off of that is, will Tylor Swift say no to Kelce for an on-field proposal? Same odds, plus 10,000, which would be the most awesome moment in sports history, that they win the Super Bowl, he proposes to her, and she says no.
That ain't happening.
I would love every bit of that.
You and I remember the conspiracy theory from the girl on TikTok was that if they were playing the Eagles, she was going to break up with him the night before because she's an Eagles fan, technically.
Well,
that's not
the
happening.
Eagles didn't get that. The Eagles fell apart.
That's not happening now.
Yeah.
So.
Sirianni's fault. It's all Sirianni's fault.